The Phoenix Theatre and Arts Company's audio drama series presents Frances Hodgson Burnett's The Secret Garden, in 5 parts, adapted and directed by Jenna Isabella. For past episodes, upcoming events, and other information, make sure to visit our website at phoenixtheatreartsco.com. That's theater with an R-E. Without further ado, we give you The Secret Garden, Part 3.
Mary, you never finished the story. At what point do we actually meet? I know you were happy to get your bit of Earth, but I didn't realize we were living under the same roof all the time and still hadn't met.
Just be patient. Sorry about him, but he's not wrong. It seems about time we get to this part of the story. Let's see, where did we leave off?
Oh, you were excited to plant the seeds in your garden with Dickon.
That's right. You had just met your Uncle Archibald, and he gave you permission to have a garden and plant whatever you liked.
That's right. So you see, listener, I woke up quite early the following morning, more than a little excited at the prospect of spending another day working in the garden with Dickon. But to my dismay I woke to find the heavy rain was pouring outside my window, and the sound of the horrid buzzing again. I remember thinking, it sounds just like a person lost on the moor and wandering on crying. It isn't the wind now. That isn't wind. It is different. It is that crying I heard before. I'm going to find out what it is. Everybody is in bed, and I don't care about Mrs. Medlock. I don't care. I took my bedside candle and tiptoed out of my room and down long corridor after corridor until I found the door covered with tapestry, the one Mrs. Medlock had come through the day I got lost. I pushed it open very gently and could hear the crying quite plainly, and I could see a glimmer of light coming from beneath the door down the passage. The someone was crying in that room, and it was quite a young someone. I walked into the room. There was a low fire glowing faintly on the hearth, and a nightlight burning by the side of a carved 4-poster bed hung with brocade, and on the bed was lying a boy, crying fretfully. He looked like a boy who had been ill, but he was crying more as if he were tired and cross than as if he were in pain. Suddenly he noticed the light from my candle as I came near, and he turned his head on his pillow and stared at me, his grey eyes opening so wide that they seemed immense.
Who are you? Are you a ghost?
No, I am not. Are you one?
No, I am Colin.
Who is Colin?
I am Colin Craven. Who are you?
I am Mary Lennox. Mr. Craven is my uncle.
He is my father.
Your father? No one ever told me he had a boy. Why didn't they?
Come here. You are real, aren't you? I have such real dreams very often. You might be one of them.
I will pinch you a little if you like, to show you how real I am. For a minute I thought you might be a dream too.
Where did you come from?
From my own room. The wind withered, so I couldn't go to sleep, and I heard someone crying and wanted to find out who it was. What were you crying for?
Because I couldn't go to sleep either, and my head ached. Tell me your name again.
Mary Lennox. Did no one ever tell you I had come to live here?
No, they daren't.
Why?
Because I should have been afraid you would see me. I won't let people see me.
Why?
Because I am like this always, ill and having to lie down. My father won't let people talk me over either. Servants are not allowed to speak about me. If I live, I may be a hunchback, but I shan't live. My father hates to think I may be like him.
Oh, what a strange house this is. Everything is a kind of secret. Rooms are locked up, and gardens are locked up, and you? Have you been locked up?
No, I stay in this room because I don't want to be moved out of it. It tires me too much.
Does your father come and see you?
Sometimes. Generally when I am asleep. He doesn't want to see me.
Why?
My mother died when I was born. It makes him wretched to look at me. He thinks I don't know, but I've heard people talking. He almost hates me.
He hates the garden because she died.
What garden?
Oh, just a garden she used to like. Have you been here always?
Nearly always. Sometimes I have been taken to places at the seaside, but I won't stay because people stare at me. I used to wear an iron thing to keep my back straight, but a grand doctor came from London to see me and said it was stupid. He told him to take it off and keep me out in the fresh air. I hate fresh air and I don't want to go out.
I didn't when I first came here. Why do you keep looking at me like that?
Because of the dreams that are so real. Sometimes when I open my eyes, I don't believe I'm awake.
We're both awake. It looks quite like a dream, and it's the middle of the night and everybody in the house is asleep. Everybody but us. We are wide awake.
I don't want it to be a dream.
If you don't like people to see you, do you want me to go away?
No, I should be sure you were a dream if you went. If you are real, sit down on that big footstool and talk. I want to hear about you.
What do you want me to tell you? He wanted to know how long I had been at Misselthwaite. He wanted to know which corridor my room was on. He wanted to know what I had been doing, if I disliked the moor as he disliked it, where I had lived before I came to Yorkshire. I answered all these questions and many more, and he lay back on his pillow and listened. He made me tell him a great deal about India and about my voyage across the ocean. I found out that because he had been an invalid, he had not learned things as other children had. One of his nurses had taught him to read when he was quite little, and he was always reading and looking at pictures and splendid books. Though his father rarely saw him when he was awake, he was given all sorts of wonderful things to amuse himself with. He never seemed to have been amused, however. He could have anything he asked for, and he was never made to do anything he did not like to do.
Everyone is obliged to do what pleases me. It makes me ill to be angry. No one believes I shall live to grow up. How old are you?
I'm 10, and so are you.
How do you know that?
Because when you were born, the garden door was locked and the key was buried, and it has been locked for 10 years.
What garden door was locked? Who did it? Where was the key buried?
It was the garden Mr. Craven hates. He locked the door. No one knew where he buried the key.
What sort of a garden is it?
No one has been allowed to go into it for 10 years. Gardeners won't talk about it. I think they have been told not to answer questions.
I would make them.
Could you?
Everyone is obliged to please me. I told you that. If I were to live, this place would sometime belong to me. They all know that. I would make them tell me.
Do you think you won't live?
I don't suppose I shall. Ever since I remember, anything I have heard people say, I shan't. At first they thought I was too little to understand, and now they think I don't hear. But I do. My doctor is my father's cousin. He is quite poor, and if I die, he will have all Misselthwaite when my father is dead. I should think he wouldn't want me to live.
Do you want to live?
No, but I don't want to die. When I feel ill, I lie here and think about it until I cry and cry.
I have heard you crying 3 times, but I did not know who it was. Were you crying about that?
I dare say. Let us talk about something else. Talk about that garden. Don't you want to see it?
Yes.
I do too. I don't think I ever really wanted to see anything before. But I want to see that garden. I want the key dug up. I want the door unlocked. I would let them take me there in my chair. That would be getting fresh air. I am going to make them open the door. They have to please me. I will make them take me there, and I will let you go too.
Oh, don't. Don't do that.
Why? You said you wanted to see it.
I do. If you make them open the door and take you in like that, it will never be a secret again.
A secret? What do you mean? Tell me.
You see, if no one knows but ourselves, if there was a door hidden somewhere under the ivy, if there was, and we could find it, and if we could slip through it together and shut it behind us, then no one knew anyone was inside, and we called it our garden and pretended that we were missel thrushes, and it was our nest, and if we played there almost every day and dug and planted seeds and made it all come alive.
Is it dead?
It soon will be if nobody cares for it. The bulbs live, but the roses.
What are bulbs?
There are daffodils and lilies and snowdrops. They are working in the earth now, pushing up pale green points because the spring is coming.
Is the spring coming? What is it like? You don't see it in rooms if you are ill.
It is the sun shining on the rain, and the rain falling on the sunshine, and things pushing up and working under the earth. If the garden was a secret, and we could get into it, we could watch the things grow bigger every day. And see how many roses are alive. Don't you see Oh, don't you see how much nicer it would be if it was a secret?
I never had a secret, except that one about not living to grow up. They don't know I know that, so it is a sort of secret. But I like this kind better.
If you won't make them take you to the garden, perhaps. I feel almost sure I can find out how to get in sometime. And then, if the doctor wants you to go out in your chair, and if you can always do what you want to do, perhaps we might find some boy who would push you, and we could go alone, and it would always be a secret garden.
I should like that. I should like that. I should not mind fresh air in a secret garden.
I'll tell you what I think it would be like if we could go into it. It has been shut up so long things have grown into a tangle, perhaps. Colin lay quite still and listened while I told him about the roses, which might have clambered from tree to tree and hung down, about the many birds which might have built their nests there because it was so safe. I told him about the robin and Ben Weatherstaff, and there was so much to tell about the robin.
I did not know birds could be like that. But if you stay in a room, you never see things. What a lot of things you know. I feel as if you had been inside that garden. I am going to let you look at something. Do you see that rose-colored silk curtain hanging on the wall over the mantelpiece? There is a cord hanging from it. Go and pull it.
So I got up and pulled the cord, and it pulled the silk curtains back to reveal a painting of a girl with a smiling face. She had bright hair tied up with a blue ribbon, and her gay, lovely eyes were exactly like Colin's unhappy ones, agate grey and looking twice as big as they really were because of the black lashes all around them.
She is my mother. I don't see why she died. Sometimes I hate her for doing it. If she had lived, I believe I should not have been ill always. I dare say I should have lived too. And my father would not have hated to look at me. I dare say I should have had a strong back. Draw the curtain again.
She is much prettier than you, but her eyes are just like yours. At least they are the same shape and colour. Why is the curtain drawn over her?
I made them do it. Sometimes I don't like to see her looking at me. She smiles too much when I am ill and miserable. Besides, she is mine, and I don't want everyone to see her.
What would Mrs. Medlock do if she found out that I had been here?
She would do as I told her to do. And I should tell her that I wanted you to come here and talk to me every day. I am glad you came.
So am I. I will come as often as I can, but I shall have to look every day for the garden door.
Yes, you must. And you can tell me about it afterward. I think you shall be a secret too. I will not tell them until they find out. I can always send the nurse out of the room and say that I want to be by myself. Do you know Martha?
Yes, I know her very well. She waits on me.
She is the one who is asleep in the other room. The nurse went away yesterday to stay all night with her sister, and she always makes Martha attend to me when she wants to go out. Martha shall tell you when to come here.
Martha knew about you all the time.
Yes, she often attends to me. The nurse likes to get away from me, and then Martha comes.
I have been here a long time. Shall I go away now? Your eyes look sleepy.
I wish I could go to sleep before you leave me.
Shut your eyes and I will do what my ayah used to do in India. I will pat your hand and stroke it and sing something quite low. And so I stayed with him until he drifted off to sleep. And the next morning the rain continued. Since I couldn't go to the garden, I told Martha everything about my visit with my cousin.
What's the matter with thee? You look as if you had something to say.
I have found out what the crying was. I heard it in the night, and I got up and I went to see where it came from. It was Colin. I found him.
Oh, Miss Mary! You shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't. Oh, you'll get me in trouble. I never told you nothing about him, but you'll get me in trouble. Oh, I shall lose my place, and what'll Mother do?
You won't lose your place. He was glad I came. We talked and talked, and he said he was glad I came.
Was he? Are you sure? You don't know what he's like when anything vexes him. He's a big lad to cry like a baby, but when he's in a passion he'll fair scream just to frighten us. He knows we daren't call ourselves our own.
He wasn't vexed. I asked him if I should go away, and he made me stay. He asked me questions, and I sat on a big footstool and talked to him about India and about the robin and gardens. He wouldn't let me go. He let me see his mother's picture. But before I left him, I sang him to sleep.
I can scarcely believe you. It's as if you'd walked straight into a lion's den. If he'd been like he is most times, he'd have thrown himself into one of his tantrums and roused the house. He won't let strangers look at him.
He let me look at him. I looked at him all the time and he looked at me. We stared. He's not going to tell Mrs. Medlock anything about it yet. It's to be a sort of secret just at first. And he says everybody is obliged to do as he pleases. He says Mrs. Medlock must. And he wants me to come and talk to him every day. And you are to tell me when he wants me.
Me? I shall lose my place. I shall for sure.
You can't if you are doing what he wants you to do, and everybody is ordered to obey him.
Do you mean to say that he was nice to you? You must have bewitched him.
Do you mean magic? I've heard about magic in India, but I can't make it. I just went into his room and I was so surprised to see him, I stood and stared. And then he turned round and stared at me, and he thought I was a ghost or a dream, and I thought perhaps he was. And it was so queer being there alone together in the middle of the night and not knowing about each other. And we began to ask each other questions, and when I asked him if I must go away, he said I must not.
Oh, the world is coming to an end.
But Martha, what is the matter with him?
Nobody knows for sure and certain. Mr. Craven went off his head like when he was born. The doctors thought he'd have to be put in an asylum. It was because Mrs. Craven died, like I told you. He wouldn't set eyes on the baby. He just raved and said it'd be another hunchback like him, and it'd better die.
Is Colin a hunchback? He didn't look like one.
He isn't yet, but he began all wrong. Mother said that there was enough trouble and raging in the house to set any child wrong. They was afraid his back was weak, and they've always been taking care of it, keeping him lying down and not letting him walk. Once they made him wear a brace, but he fretted so he was downright ill. Then a big doctor came to see him and made them take it off. He talked to the other doctor quite rough, in a polite way. He said there'd been too much medicine and too much letting him have his own way.
I think he's a very spoiled boy.
He's the worst young nowt as ever was. I won't say as he hasn't been ill a good bit. He's had coughs and colds that's nearly killed him 2 or 3 times. He had rheumatic fever and once he had typhoid. Mrs. Medlock did get a fright then. He'd been out of his head and she was talking to the nurse, thinking he didn't know nothing, and she said, "He'll die this time, sure enough, and best thing for him and for everybody." And she looked at him, and there he was with his big eyes open, staring at her as sensible as she was herself. She didn't know what had happened, but he just stared at her and says, "You give me some water and stop talking."
Do you think he will die?
Mother says there's no reason why any child should live that gets no fresh air and doesn't do nothing but lie on his back and read picture books and take medicine. He's weak and hates the trouble of being taken out of doors, and he gets cold so easy he says it makes him ill.
I wonder if it would not do him good to go out into the garden and watch things growing. It did me good.
One of the worst fits he ever had was one time they took him out where the roses are by the fountain. He'd been reading in a paper about people getting something he'd called rose cold, and he began to sneeze and said he'd got it, and then a new gardener as didn't know the rules passed by and looked at him curious. He threw himself into a passion, and he said he'd looked at him because he was going to be a hunchback. He cried himself into a fever and was ill all night.
If he ever gets angry at me, I shall never go and see him again.
Oh, he'll have thee if he wants thee. You may as well know that at the start. I dare say the nurse wants me to stay with him a bit. I hope he's in a good temper.
So Martha left to sit with Colin for a while. Within 10 minutes she returned and said,
"Well, you have bewitched him. He's up on his sofa with his picture books. He's told the nurse to stay away until 6 o'clock. I'm to wait in the next room. The minute she was gone, he called me to him and says, 'I want Mary Lennox to come and talk to me, and remember you're not to tell anyone. You'd better go as quick as you can.'"
So I walked quickly back to Colin's room and found him on the sofa, and quite a bit brighter than the night before.
Come in. I've been thinking about you all morning.
I've been thinking about you too. You don't know how frightened Martha is. She says Mrs. Medlock will think she told me about you and she will be sent away.
Go and tell her to come here. She is in the next room.
So I went and got Martha.
Have you to do what I please, or have you not?
"I have to do what you please, sir."
Has Medlock to do what I please?
Everybody has, sir.
Well then, if I order you to bring Miss Mary to me, how can Medlock send you away if she finds it out?
Please don't let her, sir.
I'll send her away if she dares to say a word about such a thing. She wouldn't like that, I can tell you.
Oh, thank you, sir. I want to do my duty, sir.
What I want is your duty. I'll take care of you. Now go away. Mary, why do you look at me like that? What are you thinking about?
I am thinking about two things. This is the first one. Once in India, I saw a boy who was a Raja. He had rubies and emeralds and diamonds stuck all over him. He spoke to his people just as you spoke to Martha. Everybody had to do everything he told them, in a minute. I think they would have been killed if they hadn't. And the second thing I was thinking is how different you are from Dickon.
I shall make you tell me about Rajas presently. And who is this Dickon? What a strange name.
He's Martha's brother. He is 12 years old. He's not like anyone else in the world. He can charm foxes and squirrels and birds just as the natives in India charm snakes. He plays a very soft tune on a pipe and they come and listen.
There is a picture of a snake charmer in this book. Come and look at it. Can he do that?
He played on his pipe and they listened, but he doesn't call it magic. He says it's because he lives on the moor so much and he knows their ways. He says he feels sometimes as if he was a bird or a rabbit himself. He likes them so. I think he asked the robin questions. It seemed as if they talked to each other in soft chirps. He knows all about eggs and nests, and he knows where foxes and badgers and otters live. He keeps them secret so that the other boys won't find their holes and frighten them. He knows about everything that grows or lives on the moor.
Does he like the moor? How can he when it's such a great, bare, dreary place?
It's the most beautiful place. Thousands of lovely things grow on it, and there are thousands of little creatures all busy building nests and making holes and burrows, and chippering and singing or squeaking to each other. They are so busy and having such fun under the earth or in the trees or heather. It's their world.
How do you know all that?
I have never been there once, really. I only drove over it in the dark. I thought it was hideous. Martha told me about it at first, and then Dickon. When Dickon talks about it, you feel as if you saw things and heard them, and as if you were standing in the heather and the sun shining and the gorse smelling like honey and all full of bees and butterflies.
You never see anything if you are ill.
You can't if you stay in a room.
I couldn't go on the moor.
You might, sometime.
Go on the moor? How could I? I am going to die.
How do you know?
I've heard it ever since I remember. They are always whispering about it and thinking I don't notice. They wish I would, too.
If they wished I would, I wouldn't. Who wishes you would?
The servants, and of course Dr. Craven, because he would get Misselthwaite and be rich instead of poor. He daren't say so, but he always looks cheerful when I am worse. When I had typhoid fever, his face got quite fat. I think my father wishes it, too.
I don't believe he does.
Don't you?
I like the Grand Doctor from London, because he made them take the iron thing off. Did he say you were going to die? What did he say?
He didn't whisper. Perhaps he knew I hated whispering. I heard him say one thing quite aloud. He said, the lad might live if he would make up his mind to it, put him in the humour. It sounded as if he was in a temper.
I'll tell you who would put you in the humour, perhaps. I believe Dickon would. He's always talking about live things. He never talks about dead things or things that are ill. He's always looking up in the sky to watch birds flying, and looking down at the earth to see something growing. He has such round blue eyes, and they are so wide open with looking about, and he laughs such a big laugh with his wide mouth, and his cheeks are as red as cherries. See here, don't let us talk about dying. I don't like it. Let us talk about living. Let us talk about Dickon, and then we will look at your pictures. And Colin and I sat this way, talking and laughing, enjoying each other's company, when suddenly the door opened and in walked Dr. Craven and Mrs. Medlock.
Good Lord! Good Lord!
What is this? What does it mean?
This is my cousin, Mary Lennox. I asked her to come and talk to me. I like her. She must come and talk to me whenever I send for her.
Oh, sir, I don't know how it happened. There is not a servant on the place that dare talk. They all have their orders.
Nobody told her anything. She heard me crying and found me herself. I am glad she came.
I'm afraid there has been too much excitement. Excitement is not good for you, my boy.
I should be excited if she kept away. I am better. She makes me better. The nurse must bring up her tea with mine. We will have tea together.
He does look rather better, sir, but he looked better this morning before she came into the room.
She came into the room last night. She stayed with me a long time. She sang a Hindustani song to me, and it made me go to sleep. I was better when I wakened up. I want my tea now. Tell Nurse Medlock. I usually hate to eat what they give me. Now, Mary, if you'll eat, I will. Those muffins look so nice and hot. Tell me about Raja's.
Colin was quite pleased with himself, and so was I, really. The next week it rained, so there was no opportunity to tend to my blossoming garden, but I didn't mind because I spent my time with Colin. I thought Mrs. Medlock would scold me privately, but she didn't, in fact.
You are a sly young one to listen and get out of your bed and go following things up like you did that night. But there's no saying it's not been sort of a blessing to the lot of us. He's not had a tantrum or a whining fit since you made friends. The nurse was just going to give up the case because she was so sick of him. But she says she doesn't mind staying now that you've gone on duty with her.
I was glad Colin seemed to be getting better, but I wasn't sure if I could trust him with the secret garden just yet. I wanted so much to be outside, and for Colin to be outside and get well. Martha even said I was getting stronger from the fresh air of the moor, so why couldn't it help Colin too? When the rain finally ceased some days later, I woke very early, dressed myself, and ventured out on the moors towards my secret garden. I thought, it is all different already. The grass is greener, and things are sticking up everywhere, and things are uncurling, and green buds of leaves are showing. This afternoon I am sure Dickon will come. But Dickon was there waiting for me by the garden door. Oh, Dickon! Dickon, how could you get here so early? The sun has only just got up.
I was up long before him. How could I have stayed abed? The world's all fair begun again this morning, it has. And it's working and humming and scratching and piping and nest building and breathing out scents till you've got to be out in it instead of lying on your back. When the sun did jump up, the moor went mad for joy, and I was in the midst of the heather. I run like mad myself, shouting and singing, and I come straight here. I couldn't have stayed away. Why, the garden was lying here waiting.
Oh, Dickon, I'm so happy I can scarcely breathe. And Soot, the raven, flew down and sat on Dickon's shoulder as he told me about the little fox cub he called Captain.
Soot here flew across the moor with me, and Captain, he ran same as if the hounds had been after him. They both felt the same as I did. See here? See how these have pushed up? And these and these. Oh, and look at these here.
We ran from one part of the garden to the other, and found so many wonders. He showed me swelling leaf buds on rose branches, which had seemed dead. He showed me 10,000 new green points pushing through the earth. There was every joy on earth in the secret garden that morning, and in the midst of them came a delight more delightful than all, because it was more wonderful. Swiftly something flew across the wall and darted through the trees to a close-grown corner. A little flare of red-breasted bird with something hanging from its beak. Dickon stood quite still and put his hand on my shoulder, almost as if we had suddenly found ourselves laughing in church.
We must not stir. We must not scarcely breathe. I knowed he was mate hunting when I seed him last. It's Ben Weatherstaff's robin. He's building his nest. He'll stay here too if we don't frighten him away.
So as not to frighten away our robin friend as he busily built his nest for his new robin family, we continued our gardening in another section, and I told Dickon all about Colin.
You've seen Colin?
I've seen him. I have been to talk to him every day this week. He wants me to come. He says I'm making him forget about being ill and dying.
I am glad of that. I'm right down glad. It makes me easier. I knowed I must say nothing about him, and I don't like having to hide things.
Don't you like hiding the garden?
I'll never tell about it, but I says to Mother, Mother, I says, I've got a secret to keep. It's not a bad one, you know that. It's no worse than hiding where a bird's nest is. You don't mind, do you?
I always wanted to hear about his mother. What did she say?
It was just like her, what she said. She gave my head a bit of a rub and laughed, and she says, lad, you can have all the secrets you like. I've known you 12 years.
How did you know about Colin?
Everybody has known about Mr. Craven, known there was a little lad that was like to be a cripple, and they know Mr. Craven didn't like him to be talked about. Folks is sorry for Mr. Craven because Mrs. Craven was such a pretty young lady, and they were so fond of each other. Mrs. Medlock stops in our cottage whenever she goes to Thwaite, and she doesn't mind talking to Mother before us children because she knows we've been brought up to be trusty. How did you find out about him? Martha was in fine trouble the last time she came home. She said you'd heard him fretting and you were asking questions and she didn't know what to say.
I told him the story about the midnight wuthering of the wind which wakened me, and about the faint far-off sounds of the complaining voice which had led me down the dark corridors with my candle, and had ended with the opening of the door of the dimly lit room with the carven four-post bed in the corner. When I described Colin's small ivory-white face and the strange black-rimmed eyes, Dickon shook his head.
Them's just like his mother's eyes, only hers was always laughing, they say. They say Mr. Craven can't bear to see him when he's awake because his eyes are so like his mother's and yet look so different in his miserable bit of a face. Poor soul, he wishes he'd never been born. Mother, she says that's the worst thing on earth for a child. Those that are not wanted scarce ever thrives. Mr. Craven, he'd buy anything his money could buy for the poor lad, but he'd like to forget as he's on earth. For one thing, he's afraid to look at him someday and find he's growed a hunchback.
Colin's so afraid of it himself that he won't sit up. He says he's always thinking that if he should feel a lump coming, he should go crazy and scream himself to death.
Yeah, he oughtn't to lie there thinking things like that. No lad could get well if they think those sorts of things. When first we got in here, it seemed like everything was grey. Look round now and tell me if you don't see a difference.
Why, even the grey wall is changing. It is as if a green mist were creeping over it. It's almost like a green gauze veil.
Aye, and it'll be greener and greener till the grey is all gone. Can you guess what I was thinking just
I knew it was something nice. I believe it was something about Colin.
I was thinking that if he was out here, he wouldn't be watching for lumps to grow on his back. He'd be watching for buds to break on the rose bushes, and he'd likely be healthier. I was wondering if we could ever get him in the humour to come out here and lie under the trees in his wheelchair.
I've been wondering that myself. I've thought of it almost every time I've talked to him. I've wondered if he could keep a secret, and I wondered if we could bring him here without anyone seeing us. I thought perhaps he could push his carriage. The doctor said he must have fresh air, and if he wants us to take him out, no one dare disobey him. He won't go out for other people, and perhaps they will be glad if he will go out with us. He could order the gardeners to keep away so they wouldn't find out.
It'd be good for him, I'll warrant. We'd not be thinking he'd better never have been born. We'd be just two children watching a garden grow, and he'd be another. Two lads and a little lass just looking on at the springtime. I warrant it'd be better than doctor's stuff.
He's been lying in his room so long, and he's been so afraid of his back that it has made him sad and strange. He knows a good many things out of books, but he doesn't know anything else. He says he has been too ill to notice things, and hates going out of doors, and hates gardens and gardeners. But he likes to hear about this garden because it is a secret. I daren't tell him much, but he said he wanted to see it.
We'll have him out here sometime for sure. I could push his carriage well enough. Have you noticed how the robin and his mate have been working while we've been sitting here? Look at him, perched on that branch, wondering where it'd be best to put that twig he's got in his beak.
We found a great deal to do that morning, and I was quite late in returning to the house, and was also in such a hurry to get back to my work that I quite forgot Colin until the last moment. Martha, tell Colin I can't come and see him yet. I'm very busy in the garden.
Miss Mary, it may put him all out of humour when I tell him that.
I can't stay. Dickon's waiting for me. So I ran back to the garden and Dickon, and I worked the whole afternoon. My newly found strength was so useful to me as I dug and weeded in the garden that afternoon. I felt so good I could burst. I could hardly wait to tell Colin everything about my day. I felt sure he would like to hear everything about Dickon and Captain and the robin, so I was quite downcast later when I opened the door of my room to see Martha standing waiting for me with a doleful face. What's the matter? What did Colin say when you told him I couldn't come?
I wish you'd gone. He was nigh going into one of his tantrums. There's been a nice to-do all afternoon to keep him quiet. He would watch the clock all the time.
I was not used to considering the feelings of anyone else, and I saw no reason why an ill-tempered boy should interfere with the thing I liked best. I stormed into his room. He was not on his sofa, and said he was lying flat on his back in bed, and he did not even look at me when I came in. Why didn't you get up?
I did get up this morning when I thought you were coming. I made them put me back in bed this afternoon. My back ached and my head ached and I was tired. Why didn't you come?
I was working in the garden with Dickon.
I won't let that boy come here if you go and stay with him instead of coming to talk to me.
If you send Dickon away, I'll never come into this room again.
You'll have to if I want you.
I won't.
I'll make you. They shall drag you in.
Shall they, Mr. Raja? They may drag me in, but they can't make me talk when they get me here. I'll sit and clench my teeth and never tell you one thing. I won't even look at you. I'll stare at the floor.
You are a selfish thing.
What are you? Selfish people always say that. Anyone is selfish who doesn't do what they want. You're more selfish than I am. You're the most selfish boy I ever saw.
I'm not as selfish as you, because I'm always ill, and I'm sure there is a lump coming on my back, and I am going to die besides.
You're not.
I'm not. I am. You know I am. Everybody says so.
I don't believe it. You just say that to make people sorry. I believe you're proud of it. I don't believe it. If you are a nice boy, it might be true, but you're too nasty.
Get out of the room!
I'm going, and I won't come back. I was going to tell you all sorts of nice things. Dickon brought his fox and his rook, and I was going to tell you all about them. Now I won't tell you a single thing. I went back to my room feeling cross and disappointed. I had looked forward to telling him a great many things. I felt so sour and unrelenting that for a few minutes I almost forgot about Dickon and the green veil creeping over the world and the soft wind blowing down from the moor. Martha was waiting for me, and there was a wooden box on the table, and its cover had been removed and revealed that it was full of neat packages.
Mr. Craven sent it to you. It looks as if it has picture books in it.
I remembered what he had asked me the day I had gone to his room. Do you want anything? Dolls, toys, books? So I opened the package, and there were several beautiful books such as Cullen had, and 2 of them were about gardens and were full of pictures. There were 2 or 3 games, and there was a beautiful little writing case with a gold monogram on it and a gold pen and inkstand. Everything was so nice that my joy began to crowd the anger out of my mind. I had not expected him to remember me at all. I thought, I can write better than I can print, and the first thing I shall write with that pen will be a letter to tell him I am much obliged. If I wasn't so vexed at Colin, I would have run in to show him the presents and shared the gardening books with him, and he would have enjoyed himself so much he would never once have thought if he was going to die, or have put his hand on his spine to see if there was a lump coming. He had a way of doing that which I could not bear. He was so afraid he would have a hunchback like his father, and most of his tantrums grew out of his hysterical hidden fear. He always began to think about it when he was cross or tired, and he has been cross today. Perhaps if he has been thinking about it all afternoon. I said I would never go back again, but perhaps, just perhaps, I would go and see if he wants me in the morning. Perhaps he'd try to throw his pillow at me again, but I thought I'd go anyway.
I'm so glad you did come back, Mary.
Mary, shall we take a rest here?
Yes, let's go find Robin and breathe in the fresh air of the moor. Mary can finish telling the story later.
PTAC's audio drama series is a production by the Phoenix Theatre and Arts Company. This week's episode, The Secret Garden Part 3, was written by Frances Hodgson Burnett, adapted and directed by Jenna Isabella, and edited by Gina Stanton and Jenna Isabella. This episode features the vocal talents of Amanda Booth as Mary Lennox, Gina Stanton as Martha Sowerby, Devin Traeger as Dickon Sowerby, Emma Berkowitz as Colin Craven, Judy Brewster as Mrs. Medlock, and John Isabella III as Dr. Craven. Original PTAC music by Brian Sanishin. For a full listing of credits, visit us at phoenixtheatreartsco.com. That's theater with an R-E. While you're there, please consider clicking the donate link. That would be delightful. Have comments or questions? Email us at phoenixtheatreartsco@gmail.com or find us on social media. A very special thank you to our Patreon subscribers, with a shout out to those sitting in the box seats, Ken Shelby, and onstage seating, Margaret Thurston. We couldn't do this without you. Join us next time for The Secret Garden Part 4.